Joining me now, former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. He continues to advise the president, is the author of a new book, Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency. We have the book right here, and it will come up repeatedly in this conversation because I think it's connected to this conversation. I want to start with Roger Stone first, because you have a unique relationship with Roger Stone. Explain to me what his relationship was with the Trump campaign.
So Roger Stone's history with Donald Trump goes back 30 years. He's been someone who has known then Mr. Trump and worked with him through business dealings long before we ever started a political campaign, long before I ever met Mr. Trump. When I came to the Trump Organization in January of 2015 to start to look at him potentially running for president, Roger Stone was living in Florida and speaking to Mr. Trump on a fairly regular basis at that point. As the campaign progressed and we launched the campaign, Roger Stone, I ultimately fired in about August of 2015, and he wasn't around the campaign very much. He worked through Sam Nunberg, who was his emissary to the campaign, and then by August or September of 2015, I also fired.
Why did you fire Roger Stone?
Look, he wasn't doing anything on the campaign. He was living in Florida, doing, I don't know what he was doing, to be honest with you, but he had no value, and so I didn't want to pay somebody for not doing anything.
But he continued to talk to the president, correct?
Well, look, I think you have to remember, a 30-year relationship was in place. And did they have phone conversations after I fired him? They did. They were very limited in scope when I was near then-candidate Trump. And I can't recall Mr. Trump speaking to Roger Stone on more than half a dozen occasions after he was fired.
When you would hear that then-candidate Donald Trump was speaking to Roger Stone, what would your reaction be?
Oh, drive me crazy, right? I mean, maybe it's the same reaction that the White House has when they hear I'm talking to Donald Trump now, right? I don't know. But what it is, Roger Stone is a conspiracy theorist who makes up these crazy ideas, says crazy things only to recant them or say that he didn't actually do what he said he did. And so people like that I didn't think were helpful on the campaign. And so, I didn't enjoy when Roger was calling.
Do you think Roger Stone was trying to get the hacked emails from WikiLeaks?
Well, he said he met with WikiLeaks, or he said he met with Julian Assange. This is what he wrote in emails. These are his own words. Only when pressed on them did he say, well, what I said and what I did were actually two separate things. So I don't know. But if you take Roger at his own words, which are very difficult to do because most of the time he's lying when he's talking, I don't know what the truth is.
You think it's possible he was involved with the release of the hacked emails?
I don't know. Look, do I think Roger wants to pretend to be this master of the dark arts and has access to all of this information that he really has no access to and takes credit for things he had nothing to do with? Absolutely.
Do you think it's possible he spoke to the president about WikiLeaks and what they had in their possession?
I don't know, and I can tell you whenever I was with then Mr. Trump, candidate Trump, never was I there if he was speaking to Roger Stone about that particular topic.
There's a denial from Rudy Giuliani, who's the president's current attorney, told the Washington Post the president does not recall ever speaking to either Stone or Corsi about WikiLeaks. As you know from being in the business, I do not recall. It's not a no.
Yeah, look, again, I don't know Jerome Corsi, just to be clear.
You've never met him?
I don't believe I have, maybe in passing, but no substantive relationship whatsoever, never phone conversations. Right. I don't ever remember then candidate Trump saying to me, Roger Stone just called and spoke about WikiLeaks. That conversation never happened. And I think if it would have happened between Mr. Trump and Roger Stone, I would have known about it.
So overnight, it's like the bar at Star Wars in terms of the characters coming up. Paul Manafort, there was a story in The Guardian that he had met with Julian Assange when he was coming onto the campaign. Manafort vehemently denies that. It is when you were still campaign manager. Any knowledge of it?
None whatsoever. And look, to be fair, I'm not a fan of Paul Manafort. Right. He was taking meetings outside of the campaign office on a regular basis in his apartment, and what he was doing, I have no idea. That wasn't related to the campaign. But in Paul's defense, and I'm not here to defend Paul, I don't think he would have gone to London to have that conversation, and it would not have been reported. There would have been some type of evidence to show that he'd been there, whether it's a video footage or a log at the embassy or something. So, look, for this, which is very rare, I'll take Paul's word for it.
He denies it again. You say he took meetings you did not know about. It's not impossible. You also note in the book, and I found this interesting, that Manafort, who wasn't being paid by the campaign, you said was trying to get money in other ways.
Well, of course, look, what we found out now about Paul Manafort, what we didn't know at the time that he came to the campaign was he was broke. And his political consulting business overseas had gone by the way of the dodo bird. And so, he had nothing left. And he wanted to portray himself as a contemporary of candidate Trump, both in age and in financial stature. And now what we find out after the campaign ends and he's fired was he was borrowing money from everyone. He had this offshore money, which he couldn't get back in. So he was trying to parlay his relationship with Mr. Trump to rebuild some type of political consulting business overseas. And you have to remember this, John. Roger Stone and Paul Manafort have had a 30-year business relationship. Black, Manafort, and Stone, and ultimately Atwater goes back to the 80s when they had a political consulting operation in Washington, D.C. So these two individuals, who are serial liars, have been known to hang out with each other for a long time.
I get the impression you don't think they're very truthful people, based on some of the things you're hinting at here with me, Corey. Paul Manafort, this plea agreement that he had with the Mueller investigation just blew up because the Mueller team says that Manafort wasn't telling the truth. Who are you more inclined to believe between Mueller and Manafort?
Well, look, I don't know Bob Mueller, but he seems to be a man of character. And I hope he has a truthful and honest investigation. And when that investigation comes out, I hope it's made public.
Right.
Between the two, if I had to choose, I'm going to pick Bob.
And you do want it to become public. You don't want Matt Whitaker to table
if it's up to me, and the president has never asked me, and I've never spoken about it, if the report comes out, the entire thing should be given to the American people, and it should show, and I hope Bob Mueller does this, what also took place on the other side of the aisle with Clinton hiring a British spy to go to Russia, and we should find the entire story out. So I hope they release the entire document.
Just by point of fact, it was Clinton's lawyer who hired a firm that hired Steele in terms of the timeline there. I do want to ask one question about the book beyond what I asked you about Manafort there. You talk about the November 9th Club. I like clubs. So you talk about the November 9th Club in terms of the president. Explain what that is and if any of those people are still around.
Well, the November 9th Club is the group of individuals who decided to support Donald Trump only after he won the election. And look, in the history of presidents, that's been okay. I think of Jim Baker, who was on the opposite side before he became the chief of staff to Ronald Reagan, and that's okay. The difference is these individuals, not only did they not support him when he ran for president, they didn't vote for him when he was on the ballot, they took their own agenda, not the president's agenda, and they brought it to Washington. Gary Cohn, Rob Porter, Sean Spicer, Rex Tillerson, and others, right? Anonymous, whoever that is. And they did it to subvert the will of the American people and the president's agenda. And the difference with Jim Baker, who I think has been one of the greatest chiefs of staff ever, was he put his political differences aside, came in and he served his country and he served his president to the best of his ability. And those other individuals, those November 9th Club individuals, didn't do that. They kept their own agenda in place. And if you remember Bob Woodward's book, he said Gary Cohn and Rob Porter were literally taking documents off the Resolute desk so the president couldn't sign a trade agreement with South Korea. That's mind-boggling to me, and that's what we talk about in this book.
Corey Lewandowski, the book is Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the President. Thanks for coming on this morning and talking about the full range of subjects. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.